Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is May 21st, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope everyone out there is doing well today. So I'm going to provide you guys with an update, like I said I would, in regards to my letter to the president and some of the following that it has received and some of those comments that it has received on social media, particularly that of Facebook. We're going to talk about the USChina trade war because there was somewhat of a reversal of policy that took place today, so we're going to touch on that. An update to Brexit. Prime Minister Theresa May of the UK was out earlier today giving a speech in regards to her deal, or quote-unquote new deal, how she's trying to rebrand it, and how this is going to go forth before the UK Parliament for a fourth time. So we're going to talk about that. And then just more broadly, to wrap things up, I want to have a brief discussion on some economic implications for 2020 and the election of 2020, because there was another headline that I read and went through a little bit on podcast episode 73B, today's economic podcast, in regards to underemployment and how it is affecting recent college graduates. So I want to talk about that a little bit and how that might play into the 2020 election season. But first, to my letter to the president and the update in regards to the comments made on Facebook. Again, nothing constructive. It's more of the same. We have a few more days here till the end of May that this ad campaign that I put forward here on Facebook to promote my letter out there. A few more days, but I am not anticipating anything constructive, unfortunately. Again, consistent with my comments yesterday of how the vast majority, if not all people who have come across this ad, across my letter, they read the headline and they saw the picture of President Trump. This is the same thing that everybody saw if they are on my website, thecapitalnews.com. It's the same brief synopsis. It's the same title. It's the same picture of President Trump. That is what comprises my ad on Facebook to, again, trying to get my word out, get this letter out to as many people as possible, and using social media as a means to do so. Nobody is really reading the article. I can tell by the comments, and I can tell either that people aren't really, there hasn't been a major increase in volume to the website or to the podcast with more people listening to it. So again, they're just looking at the headline and looking at the picture, and then they are making comments. They don't know what the letter's about. They don't know what the podcast was about, which again, I just took the time to read the letter aloud. No idea what the content is, the argument, whether it's pro-Trump, anti-Trump, indifferent, whether it supports him in some areas, criticizes him in others. No idea if it's about the economy, if it's about the election, if it's about his tan, his hair color. They have no idea. This is the state of us. This is the United States of America. People are more fascinated with football scores, with basketball scores, than some bimbo on Instagram applying makeup. So you're going to get what you ask for. And people are going to be so surprised when this economy goes south. It's just a matter of time. And they're going to blame everybody else. They're not going to take responsibility. And then Donald Trump's out there telling everybody that this is the best economy in U.S. history. Of course, that's not true. And that's why I want to talk about that, the economic implications for 2020, because reality is going to catch up. Can the president continue this facade for another year and a half? I don't think so. But maybe he can. We do live in the financial world of Oz. He can make a tweet. He can make a statement. He can send one of his lackeys out there to tweet or make a statement in the markets rally, which is what we saw here today. So again, I will continue to keep you guys updated on this nonsense that I am witnessing and is coming through on my emails whenever there is an update or some other statement that has been posted to my Facebook page in regards to this ad that I am promoting my letter to the president. I mean, I don't want to be insulting first graders, second graders, or third graders, but this is what you would expect from them. These are adults. I assume these people are of somewhat sound mind, have jobs, pay bills, etc., etc., etc. But this is what they're doing. They read a headline, they see a picture, and then they just go and they make arguments. And again, they are not cohesive. They make no sense. They're not coherent. They are crazy. They are lunatics. They are not stringing complete thoughts together. They are not stringing together complete sentences. It's a true shame. It is a true shame. But I'm going to continue to try. Again, the eternal optimist that I am. Don't know why, but I'm going to continue to focus on it. I'm going to continue to promote it. And I'm going to continue to update you guys throughout the remainder of this month. Now, given the stock market today, again, if you want a deeper dive into this, check out episode 73B. But this is in complete relation to the US-China trade war and the escalation, because yesterday we were talking about Huawei, the Chinese telecom and tech company, being placed on heavy restrictions by the U.S. government, pretty much forbidding Huawei to operate within the United States and pretty much forbidding U.S. companies from doing business with Huawei. Now, of course, there has been a softening of that approach because our tweeter-in-chief, our tariff man, President Donald J. Trump, he has taken title and ownership to this economy and the stock market. And, of course, we saw a sell-off in the stock market yesterday following this news. We had the tech sector primarily, which is comprised pretty much, if you're looking at the indices, the NASDAQ, which sold off 1.5 percentage points yesterday because we were expecting maybe there's going to be some retaliation from the Chinese, and they would tackle and attack our tech companies in kind. And so there was a big sell-off yesterday. Well, because the president has taken title of this stock market, oh no, we can't have that. Now, of course, this isn't what's said. You have to read between the lines. You have to have your eyes open, your ears open, and you have to be a free thinker. You have to look. And now we had a reversal. Oh no, we're not going to be that strong on them, being Huawei. We're going to relax those restrictions, and we're going to kick the can down the road, and then we'll review this process back. We're going to go down until about August. Now, that could change tomorrow. But that's at least the news as of today. We're going to kick the can down the road with placing heavy restrictions on Huawei until August. We'll see what happens this month. We'll see what happens next month. If President Trump and President Xi of China meet at the G20 in Japan next month, maybe they can iron everything out, and maybe everything will be A-okay. No more tariffs, no more escalation, no more restrictions on Huawei, no thinking that maybe the Chinese are going to retaliate on Apple or Microsoft or any other U.S. tech company. Everything's A-okay. Who knows? But all we do know as of right now, that the president is manipulating these markets. I have no doubt about it. It's in the letter because it's a daily routine. Something's going on. We got to get the market up. If we happen to do something and the market goes down, we got to reverse course because I can't have that nonsense. Everything's fine. The talks are constructive. We're going to relax those restrictions on Huawei. I didn't mean it. Something's amiss here. It's either great manipulation or this president, I don't know if he wants to win the trade war. Because if he wants to win the trade war, he might have to suffer somewhat of a hit on Wall Street and the stock market. But he's taken title to it. So is he willing to sacrifice his baby? It's an interesting question. At least as it seems right now, no, he's not ready to do so. So I'm going to keep you posted on that. But that's where we are with the U.S.-China trade war. There's escalation, de-escalation. It's day to day. You have no idea what's going to happen. Now, across the pond, we had the Prime Minister of the UK, Theresa May, come out today. She gave a speech pretty much outlining her new Brexit deal, which is pretty much the same as it was. However, there's a little bit more appeasement to, I think she's attempting to get as many votes as possible because, of course, this will be the fourth time her deal goes before the British Parliament. So that means it got struck down 3 times, and you have to remember, folks, because I know we've covered a lot of information, but you have to remember the first time that her deal went before Parliament, it got decimated. It was an historic defeat. It was the largest defeat ever in British Parliament history. Not in recent history, not in the past decade, ever. In the history of British Parliament, this was the largest defeat. Now, subsequently, when it was voted on the second and third time, the Prime Minister got closer to getting it passed, but she still failed on the second and third try. Now, she is going to put it to the floor again for a 4th attempt. Now, last week we were saying if it should fail for the 4th time, she will resign pretty much immediately. If it passes, it will be somewhat of a more, organized transition. She's still going to be stepping down, but it won't be as immediate, and there will be a more of a plan in place for somebody to take over her prime ministership. Now, I took the time to listen to this speech. It wasn't that long, and it was not impressive. It's, again, basically appeasement to the members of Parliament to just vote for the damn thing, and let's be on with it. Those of you who have been following this podcast for the past few months know that I have been providing as many updates as I can regarding Brexit, because it's an interesting story from an economic standpoint, it's an interesting story from a political standpoint, but as far as I'm concerned, the most crucial aspect of it is the fact that in 2016, in June, so we're right there, folks, we're right there at the 3-year mark next month, the British people voted in a referendum to leave the European Union, and that's why we have the term Brexit. Now, over the past few months since this podcast has been on the air, I have given Theresa May a lot of credit, at least in her rhetoric, for saying it is our duty as politicians and representatives of the people to fulfill their will, which is Brexit. And she said it, even though she herself voted to remain. That's the other problem that we are currently facing right now, because we have most members of Parliament who voted to remain. So we have the vast majority of politicians who are tasked with crafting a negotiation or some sort of agreement to leave the European Union. They voted to stay. You see the conflict of interest? It's a problem. But at least in rhetoric, Theresa May has been on the right side of it. Now, I've been saying also for the past few months, I hope that this was not a cynical ploy, a cynical political game that has been played by the Prime Minister all along to just kick this can down the road, maybe tire everybody out, the public out, and say, okay, hands up, we're done. We give up. Let's just go back. Let's just do another referendum, and then we'll just all vote to remain this time because we don't need these headaches. I hope beyond hope that that is not the case, but you still have many members of Parliament and many members of the public saying that they want a second referendum. This is why this is such a fascinating story to me, besides the politics and the economics of it, because this calls into question directly the institutions of democracy, because the people voted 3 years ago to leave. It's not incumbent on the politicians to make it happen. In my opinion, there doesn't need to be a deal. This is just how governments work. They like to have deals. They like to have things on paper. They like to waste time and money. That's what they do. They attempted it. They failed. You had a hard deadline, a quote-unquote hard deadline for March 29th. Well, it obviously wasn't that hard of a deadline because we're well past March 29th, and the can has been kicked down the road, and we now have a new deadline of October 31st, which is, of course, Halloween. So trick or treat for that one. That's the problem, folks. Economics, politics aside, as interesting as it is, as much as we talk about it, it has to do with the institution of democracy, because if it's going to be completely ignored by a country such as the United Kingdom, we got a big problem. We have a big problem, and that's why I pay so much attention to this. Now, her speech, the Prime Minister's speech today, again, was a bunch of nothing. She's talking about, well, we're going to have the customs union. We're going to have minimums here placed in the British law because we're going to maintain European Union minimums for workers' rights, for trade agreements, yada, yada, yada. In essence, what she's saying is we're going to have Brexit, but we're really staying in the European Union. That's a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of malarkey. But that's what she said because she's trying to appease as many people as possible to vote for her deal for the 4th time, to get it passed. Because it will be obviously a stain on her legacy as the Prime Minister of the UK. I mean, I understand this woman. I understand where she's coming from. I admire her optimism. I mean, this woman has a lot of grit. I mean, believe you me, she's flying all over the place trying to get things done, you know, trying to rebrand this deal for a 4th time to get people to vote for it. I admire her determination. I admire the grit. But it's a bunch of crap. That's all it is. Just leave. Just leave, because even if this thing does get passed, she's still gone. She's still out of the job. Somebody else is going to take over, and then who knows what's going to take place. And if it doesn't, well, then it's going to be an immediate takeover from somebody else, and then who really knows what's going to take place? Because on the economic side of things, we've been talking about the British pound depreciating against the U.S. dollar, along with other currencies, but primarily we talk about the U.S. dollar here. So the British pound has been depreciating against the U.S. dollar in light of all of these new news stories and talks of, well, Brexit's up in the air, what's really going on here. So we're going to keep our eye on that because it's important. Plain and simple. But that's the Brexit chaos news for the day. What's going to happen tomorrow, just like here, is anybody's guess. We have, in a couple days, on May 23rd, we have the EU parliamentary elections. We still don't have Brexit. You have people such as Nigel Farage, his Brexit party, a whole bunch of populists in the UK and Italy, Greece, Germany, France, Spain. These people are going to become members of the European Parliament. It's going to get very, very interesting because a lot of people are sick and tired of the laws, the rules, and regulations that the EU bureaucrats are placing on all of these economies, which are suffering or have been suffering for quite a while. You have a huge populist uprising in Italy. They are pretty much giving the middle finger to the European Parliament right now because they're saying, look, we cannot get our fiscal house in order. We cannot get it in order as far as the terms and conditions are set forth by the EU Parliament. And they're just saying, well, screw you guys. This is our country, blah, blah, blah. So don't be surprised if Italy is next to put some sort of referendum on the block to their people to leave the European Union. I've been telling you this for quite a while, too. I anticipate that the European Union will disintegrate within a decade, if not before. I will not be surprised at all. It's just a flawed system. It's a flawed policy. I understand the idea of it, but its execution, its implementation, it's a complete farce. This is the elite of the elite. It's the good old boys club. It's billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars going into the kitty and being managed and mismanaged by EU bureaucrats, with people all over Europe not knowing who any of these people are. It is not a good system at all. So I'll keep you updated on the Brexit news. It's not going away, that's for sure. And buckle up for the EU parliamentary elections because there's going to be, I think, a populist uprising. Now, I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll of course admit that, but I think we have to look for a large section of new members to the European Parliament are going to be populist. So we're going to have a lot of Eurosceptics to contend with, which to me is a great thing because I want the European Union to disintegrate. Now, some of the economic implications for 2020. One of the headlines that we read today on episode 73B, today's economic podcast, was in regards to the underemployment rate for recent college graduates and how that rate is even higher than what it was back in the early 2000s. And of course, what took place in the early 2000s was the bursting of the dot-com bubble and the subsequent recession. So that's fantastic. We're supposedly in the greatest U.S. economy ever, all time, and yet we have underemployment rates for recent graduates higher than what it was during the recession in 2000, 2001. That's just fantastic news that I like telling everybody. Now, this has to deal with those who are aged 22 to 27 years old. So you're talking right out of school, or maybe some individuals who have been out of school for 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 years if they graduated at 21 years old, trying to get ahead of the curve. I mean, they are underemployed. Not to mention, if you compare recent graduates from today to recent graduates back in 2000, 2001, 2002, you're talking probably about $1 trillion in additional debt. So at least the students 20 years ago, they didn't have that much debt to contend with. And they also had an economy that was able to bounce back during the mid-2000s. Now, of course, that led to the subsequent financial crisis. But now we're at the end of a business cycle. We are riddled with debt all over the place. Student loans, credit card debt, auto loan debt, corporate debt, national federal debt, state debt, everything. I mean, you can't run away from it now. So this is a true shame because this is going to become front and center because the president has taken ownership of this economy and the stock market. So when he's out there tooting his horn saying, you know what, this is the best economy ever in the history of the United States, And you have all of these people who are of age to vote and are now experiencing some real-world experience and saying, look, my goodness, I have $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in student loan debt, and I'm working at McDonald's as a low-level employee, not somebody in management or anything like that, not in corporate. I'm working at Starbucks as a barista, not as somebody in corporate, not corporate strategy, not in accounting, nothing. Somebody on the ground level with a degree, a bachelor's degree. You don't need a bachelor's degree to do those jobs. I'm not putting those jobs down for a second. But these kids went to school, they earned a degree. This is what they're doing. This is what contributes to the lower unemployment figures. This 3.6, that's why it's all a mirage. It's just a facade. It's a charade. It's all it is. It's a big game. So you have the rhetoric coming from the president, coming from the White House, and then you have reality. How are these people going to vote? And unfortunately, most of these kids are probably going to be wrapped up in a lot of the socialist rhetoric. So they are going to listen to the Bernie Sanders of the world. They're going to listen to the Pocahontases, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Kamala Harrises, the Spartacus, the Cory Bookers of the world, because they want to forgive student loans. They want to just, forgive everything, not understanding who that's going to affect down the line. Who is getting bailed out? Who hurt? Somebody, look, you have to understand that one person's debt is somebody else's asset. So if you quote-unquote bail out these students, you're doing so at the expense of taxpayers, also young people, who may have elected not to go to college. So not only did these young people who are taxpayers not go to college, now they have to bail out people, students, who did go to college because the economy is in shambles. It makes absolutely no sense. This is why, again, this is another reason why I call these people on the left lunatics, because they don't understand the consequences. And neither, unfortunately, do these younger people, these recent graduates. Some of them do, but the vast majority do not. Because if they did understand, I don't know how they could be proponents for such policies. But that's the state of affairs in which we are in. I don't know what type of economic classes these kids took. Probably none. And if they did, they probably didn't pay attention. So or if they did, they were taught by some sort of socialist professor. Such a shame, such a scam. And I feel bad for these people because they have student loans. They are underemployed. So maybe they have rent, which is probably very difficult for them to afford. Maybe they have a car payment because they got to get to and from work. And we already know the statistics on that. We got 7 million Americans 90 days plus past due on their auto loans, which I believe those numbers are actually increasing. We have higher delinquencies on that taking place right now. I know for a fact we have an increase in credit card debt and in credit card defaults. Those are on the rise. So this is not the greatest economy in the world. That's why this is going to be front and center. The president could have sidestepped all of this by not taking title and ownership to the stock market and to the economy. But he did. He grabbed it with both hands. He's holding it close, and he's kissing it. That's what he's doing, foolishly. And now he's going to have to answer to all of this because there are a lot of people out there who are underemployed. You might look at the headline unemployment figure and it reads 3.6. Well, what happens if you look at the broader measure and it tells you it's 7.3? Because that happens to count the people who are underemployed. It also happens to count people who are unemployed for about a year. But it does not. It does not count the people who have been unemployed for over a year. You're unemployed, you're able and capable of working, but you've been unemployed for a year or longer, the government forgets you. They don't want to count you because it won't make their numbers look good. That's the fact, Jack. Look it up. But you have a headline number, which we are force-fed, 3.6, and we have the broader measure of U6, which is 7.3%. So it's twice the headline figure that we are told it is. And we're told that this is the best economy ever. No siree. So it's going to be very interesting because how is the president going to sidestep this? Because this is no jobs recovery. And how are the Democrats going to play this? Because they just want to forgive all of this debt, not understanding, in fact, that it's the government that holds a lot of this student debt. So the government's just going to forgive $1.5 trillion That's no problem. We already have trillion-dollar deficits, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of this. At the end of a business cycle, in the midst of the greatest economy in U.S. history, we're told, we have trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. That's by the president, this White House's own admission. Check out their 2020 budget, which is $4.75 trillion. We will have trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. Wait until we hit a recession. Then you see how big those deficits get. They could be $2, maybe even $3 trillion. Boom, like that. Don't be surprised. We have $22 trillion in debt and counting. Who's solving this problem? Oh, I know. Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, the Republican. He has the idea. He knows how to solve all of this. In the midst of all of this, he knows how to do it. You know what he's going to do? We talked about this yesterday, remember? He's going to raise the smoking age, the tobacco age, from 18 to 21. Why didn't I think of that? That'll take care of all our problems. Meddling in Venezuela, saber-rattling in the Middle East with Iran, US-China trade war. No problem. Let's just increase the smoking age and we'll solve everything. You can't make this stuff up. So join me tomorrow for the Twilight Zone. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.